No. 3:30.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025 informal meeting of our Board of Education. This is an informal meaning that this is information only. We don't take any votes during this meeting. This is just to give us information that we will be dealing with later. The first thing that we have on our agenda today is we have our board member minute, and the person that's going to do it today is, or introduce our person today, is Mr. Sean Gatchmar.
Thank you, Chairman Moss. I'm pleased to introduce to everyone Jeff Jepson. Jeff, come on up. Jeff Jepson is the Executive Vice President and COO at Evans Construction Company. I think he oversees something like 8 offices, including one in Germany, maybe 9. Evans does substantial work in the Georgia region, does not, I don't think, do any work currently with the school district, but we're encouraging all local vendors to take an active look at our projects. Mr. Jepson does work substantially with a lot of our other contractors and subs as well. Mr. Jepson served our country notably as a Black Hawk pilot, and he and his family decided to stay in Savannah after his service, where he started working with Evans. He's a big supporter of many community organizations, including the 200 Club of the Coastal Empire, which supports the families of fallen first responders. And why he's here today, he and his company have been really active supporters of the electrical youth apprenticeship program, and has worked with our CTAE programs in that regard. And we've asked him to come today to provide an update on his efforts in those regards. So, Mr. Jepson, good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Good to see a bunch of friendly faces. I appreciate you letting me speak at the informal meeting. You've never invited me to the formal meeting. That's probably on purpose. You mentioned the 200 Club. I'm just going to hit down that real quick. Most of you don't know, for the past 3 years, I've been lucky enough to serve as chairman of the 200 Club of Savannah. And one of the initiatives we've been trying to get passed is a state law to pay for the college education and tuition for the surviving spouse and children of fallen first responders. In that law, there was an amendment last minute that actually includes teachers. So if a teacher or an educator is killed in the line of duty at a school, God forbid, we hope that doesn't happen, there's now additional state resources and funding to help that family out when it comes to higher education expenses. So the bill got a lot of publicity within the first responder community, but I'm not sure a lot of educators actually knew that got passed and added on to that. So that was House Bill 56, which became Senate Bill 62, and that passed and was signed by the governor in July. So anyway, so this is, honestly, I'm pretty excited. For the last 3 years, I've been focused on kind of a workforce development. I'm in construction. I have used and hire a lot of subcontractors. My subcontractors, the average age of all of their employees are aging out. The skilled trades are just plain aging out. There aren't enough of them. They indicate right now that we're short probably at least 500,000 of those particular folks. So we've been trying to get on the action side of that and solve some solutions by putting tech school back into the high schools and even the middle school. I've been working with Dr. Lewis for the past 3 years and the CTAE folks, and we have worked out an arrangement where we now have signed agreements with 4 work-based learning companies on the private side. We have now established we have 2 construction teachers at Windsor Forest. We now have new labs and classroom space. We've agreed upon an NCCER curriculum that works and coincides with the Georgia requirements for graduation, but also is attractive to the private sector employers. So we had some input, we reviewed that, we collaborated. That curriculum actually provides some certifications that are industry recognized, which will serve anybody that goes through the program really well, even if they don't end up graduating through the full apprenticeship program. And even now, while we're just ramping up the program, we've actually been helping students already. I think 10 kids or students this year, their names were forwarded to me. We got them hooked up directly with employers, and they're already working, in those particular fields. The great thing about this program is this is not about a job. This is about a career. These kids are getting a technical competency in something, no different than becoming a lawyer or a doctor or something else. Once they get a lifetime certification, 8,000 hours, which is 4 years, these kids can travel to anywhere, any city, any country, work union, non-union, always have a skill, just be like being a doctor. They start earning money in high school at about $20 an hour. And when they're out, their salary and benefits are about $80,000 an hour starting in year one without overtime. With overtime, you're almost $100,000 per year. So this is really, and then that's starting. I gave some of you a kind of a flyer or a sheet. I have a friend of mine, didn't go to college. He just sold his electrical business for $20 million, right? And so this is it's almost a disservice to kids who are told, when you ask them what are they going to do after school, and if they don't say a college, they kind of get embarrassed, they feel second class, and they're looking at their shoes, and they don't feel any pride, and it's terrible that they do that. But there are fantastic careers that these kids can go into where there's a real need, which is going to lead to an enormous amount of wage growth. And these kids will have that skill set for a lifetime. So being able to put this back into the high schools is absolutely critical, because these students can go get jobs immediately. They can make money during the school year, summers, weekends. So honestly, we're just excited to kind of see all of this push back into the schools. I've toured 5 high schools, met with all the principals. I've given 17 presentations to 350 kids and all of the career counselors. I keep calling them guidance counselors. Dr. Lewis kept correcting me on that. And so we've done a lot of the work, and we've not shared any of that with you. I run into Sean and Stephanie occasionally, and I talk to Roger. But as a board, as a whole, I just am here to really thank you guys for the support that we've received so far. We just built the new lab in the new school. It's in place at Windsor Forest. We've hired new teachers. And then we have a lot more schools that are really interested and focused on this. And so I just hope that you guys see the benefits, know that the private sector needs this, and know that this is great for the students. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Ms. Hall, and then Dr. Brown.
You mentioned a few minutes ago about delving into the middle school level. Can you talk a bit about how that would work?
Yeah, so the youth apprenticeship program, our hope is to get this going in mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. We started off with just one in electrical, but it's a 4-year program. And so you start off as a freshman and a sophomore taking intro to construction, electrical 1, electrical 2, but you're not allowed by law to actually go into the field and start working on job sites until you reach the age of 16. And so, but then at the age of 16, then you have to get 720 work-based learning hours as part of that program. So what we're trying to do is expose kids to these opportunities in 7th and 8th grade, as well as to freshmen and sophomores and juniors. We don't care when you express your level of interest, but if they're going to get through the full 4-year program and get that certificate, then it's important that they at least know about these programs in 7th and 8th grade.
Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and for the work that you've been doing for our students. I'm really, really happy to hear more about the program. I wasn't aware of the depth of what you were doing, but I'm very pleased to hear it. One of the things that was illuminating about the book, The Millionaire Next Door, back in 1996, was that so many people who had reached millionaire status were not the people that we perceived in white-collar careers. They were plumbers, electricians, and the like, and that was one of the things that a lot of people probably who read that book weren't aware. So I'm really, really grateful that there's a pathway. The dearth of these individuals in our community is palpable. If you need some work done at your home, you know just how hard it is to find, a solid, reliable carpenter, or you know how valuable plumbing services are. So I'm just really, really happy to see this. I'm glad to see that it is available for a wide a wide variety of children in terms of age and what curriculum that they're going on. Because when I was in school and really wanted to take shop, but I wasn't tracked for shop, I was tracked for something else. I missed an opportunity that it sounds like that you are providing for these young people. So thank you.
Absolutely. We really couldn't agree more. Honestly, we are short people. We need help. We'll take everyone. You know, the kids, students, and I know you guys are focused on employability, and that does matter because once these kids start working for these work-based learning partners, they're employees, right? They're paid, and so they got to show up with a good attitude and a good work ethic, and they'll, you know, the sky's the limit. But they also have to be respectful and show up on time and do all those things that they need and, you know, be a good learner and progress and work at a proper rate for their skill set and that sort of thing.
And there's really good teaching happening in those experiences. I haven't had apprentices from your program, but I have had young apprentices in my home for electrical work and plumbing work. And seeing that teaching that's happening with the senior professional and the apprentice, I've really admired the level of mentoring, instruction, and technical development that you get to see happen in that setting. So I'm really, really glad that we're supporting it.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Smith and then Dr. Howard Hall.
Thank you tremendously for your presentation. Two questions for you. Currently, are you working with any private schools on this partnership?
So we're not currently there. So I toured the Savannah Classical Academy, and they did not have the resources or the ability to kind of do what we were being able to recreate in the public schools. We've had some early discussions with Savannah Tech about they referred to it as a dual enrollment program. That to me, I don't care if they get a college credit for it, but they're coming up with some way where if a school doesn't have the classroom, either the teachers or the labs or the classroom space allocated for this, that those students that are interested in this can then just go to Savannah Tech even when they're in high school and start those particular classes.
Got you. Another question I wanted to ask was, are there several spots for summer programs or partnerships?
So for any student who wants to be a part of this program at age 16, you'll get partnered and they'll become an employee of one of the electrical companies. So we have 4 work-based learning partners that have actually signed the work-based learning agreement or the partnership agreement, and that's the agreement between the school board, the parents, the work-based learning partner, and the student themselves. And so if you're age 16 and you're interested in this, then they can put you to work during the summers, during vacations, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, thank you for this wonderful presentation. Myself, with the early childhood, elementary education background, I think of Career Day.
Yeah.
And this would be a fine opportunity for our elementary schools to engage with different careers, such as an electrician. Quite often we have, the doctors and the teachers and the lawyers and the architects, but electrician would be a wonderful addition to include for Career Day at the elementary level.
Anyone else? Yes.
Two things. What can we do on our side to help get our kids ready so that a lot of time doesn't have to be spent knowing how important it is to be on time and attire, vocabulary use in the business world? What can we do on our side to kind of advance that so a lot of time isn't spent on that? Because usually that's the thing we hear, that our children don't have the social skills or the business demeanor to succeed, and a lot of time has to be spent on that, or they don't make it because of that.
Yeah, so the quick answer, I think, is standards and consequences, right? I used to, when I had young children, I'm not counting to 3. That's a second chance, a third chance. I'm going to ask you to do something, and I expect you to start, yes, sir, no, ma'am, or whatever it is, and then there's consequences. How do you do that when it's not your children outside? I don't know. That's what the elected officials have to do. Good luck with that. But to me, it always gets back. I spent a lot of time in the military, and there were standards and there were consequences. And they break you of all your bad habits day one at basic training, and you can't obviously have basic training for school, but basic behavioral training starts with standards and consequences. So I guess that's just my opinion, and we'll let you guys figure that piece out.
My other thought is, what can we do? You said there are 4 different companies who are really helping you with this. I think they should be applauded, and the public needs to know. These 4 businesses are helping our public schools. So
Yeah.
how do we do that? And then that would incentivize other companies perhaps to follow suit.
Yeah, I can tell you, the private sector, we can take care of. I can
okay.
get them lined up, I can get them to show up, I can get them to teach. What we really need within the schools is marketing this program to the kids. What I don't know how to do is how to reach the kids and tell them about it. And I'll give you an example. You know, I just said I had the opportunity to speak to 350 kids, right? The problem is a lot of them were at different schools. And we were only going to have this program as an incubator at one school. So the logistics of some kid raises his hand, hey, this is something I'm interested in. I'm not sure that we have thought through all the details to what to do and how to respond to that kid, and to say, hey, yes, I can get you here on these days, and this is how the transportation works. And then just educating people about what the opportunities. And we're happy to participate in that. But I think the guidance counselors, it starts with posters on the wall. It probably has a social media thing. Like, how do we communicate these opportunities to kids? And I'm not sure what the answer to that is, because I just don't think about that. But you guys have things you have to communicate to school children all the time. So I'm sure you have, your top 10 go-to things. But if we can start marketing the program to these kids, we'll get a lot more kids in the program for sure.
Thank you,
Dr.
Gary.
Constance Brown.
Thank you. That was going to be my question, is what obstacle can we move out of your way? So is communicating the program, is that the only obstacle that if the board could wave a wand?
It is right now. There is one other obstacle, and I'm not sure how to work through this yet. In most other youth apprenticeship programs that the school board has, students go to work at the same place all of the time. Right? In our case, we have students that will be going to work on this particular job site for the next 5 weeks, and then it might be to a different one. So the go-to answer has been students have to find their own transportation. We've had internal discussions on the private side of, hey, if I have 2 or 3 folks, maybe we can swing by with a van and we can pick them up at a certain time, and then we can drop them off. But we're just starting the classes now. So I think the transportation thing will probably become something in the future. And I also think the private sector will probably step up. It'll be pretty easy to find sponsors to help manage that side of it. Right now from the school, just how do we tell more kids about the program?
Dr. Howard Holland, then Ms. Kowalski.
Yes, what particular skill set would you say that a student need? For example, some children are talkers. My son was a talker and liked to argue. I said, you need to be a teacher or a lawyer. So what particular skill set do you see in a student? I don't know if it starts in elementary, middle, that will put them on that pathway to become an electrician, as far as subject areas.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so a lot of people will do these personality tests, and they put you in a box, and, oh, you should go do this, you should do it. Honestly, I think it's the kid just raising their hand and saying, I'm curious, how does this work? And, that just general curiosity of how things work is enough, because it's fulfilling when you build something and it works, and you learn a particular skill set, and it's prideful, and it's immediate feedback. If you get shocked, you did it wrong. You get a little immediate feedback, right? No, but I think it's just a curiosity, and you can have tons of kids that weren't necessarily good students, but they're just curious,
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Grabowski.
I sincerely apologize that I missed the beginning of your presentation, but look forward to going back and watching it. And you may have answered this, but so it sounds like there's an agreement that is signed by the students that are participating. Does that include a requirement that they, because I know sometimes 16 years old to start making money, if you start making really good money, school may look less attractive as far as finishing high school. Is there a requirement in that agreement that they complete high school?
I don't know, honestly. So what we did is that agreement, we took, the school board already had an existing agreement that they already used for all their other youth apprenticeship programs. And all we did was modify that basic agreement to include some specialty things related to electrical. So one of those things was an acknowledgement that the Department of Labor has a list of activities that you're not allowed to do on a construction site below the age of 18, right? And so we put a list of those types of things in there. Other than that, it really wasn't modified. So it was the school board's document to begin with. That's probably something that we probably wouldn't have thought of to put in, but I don't think anybody would ever object to that.
Okay. And I don't mean to sound like a Debbie Downer, but,
Yeah.
you know, when you put numbers like this in front of a high school student and they start making a lot of money, I just, you know,
You'd be surprised how many teachers raise their hands.
don't go stealing our
But these
teachers
are
now.
real, this is real, these are real numbers, for sure. And the best thing is they're getting a skill set, just like being a doctor or a lawyer. They're getting a certification. Once they have it, it travels with them. They can make a living anywhere, anytime.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Good. Thank you, Mr. Jepson.
I look forward to the
And
formal meeting
thank you for being a
invite
partner. Thank you so much.
someday. Thank you all.
Thank you. That was great. Okay, next. Speaking of, perfect segue to student attendance.
Absolutely. So great afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Jepson, for the work that you do in our school district and in the community. And I think you positioned us well for a conversation around attendance and employability skills that I think you would agree is really important, that our students are able to show up to school so they can develop the habit of showing up to work each and every day. So with that, I'm going to transition here. All right, so we've had an opportunity to talk about attendance on several occasions, and at the basic level, we know that when students are not in school, they are missing critical learning and essential opportunities to connect with their teachers, their peers, and to have opportunities like Mr. Jepson has shared with us this afternoon. And although we'll report out on some data today, I just want to remind us that attendance rates are not just numbers. It is a key driver of academic success, student well-being, and ultimately graduation, so that our students have an opportunity for those choice-filled lives, college, career, military, and otherwise. So it's always important for us to ground our conversation, our strategic plan, of which I just transitioned away from. Our commitment is to ensure that every student is present and engaged and supported. And so what we'd like to do is kind of walk you through our progress from last year, how we met our key performance outcome, and how we are positioning ourselves to sustain, accelerate the momentum. As you can see here on the screen, last year we provided several updates around our key performance indicator directly tied to attendance. The goal was to increase the percentage of students absent 10% of days enrolled, and ultimately and conversely, we are reducing chronic absenteeism. So I just want to, again, just remind us of how the data is presented. And while we're pleased to share out with you that we met this goal, we also recognize that there is a lot more work to do to ensure that fewer students are missing school. So as you can see here on the screen, our target was to increase to 80% by school year 2026. Last year specifically was to increase by 3 percentage points. And as you can see in the data shared on the screen, we were able to meet our goal of 77% of our students absent less than 10% of our enrolled days. When we look closer at our year-over-year comparison across grade bands, we do see some encouraging signs, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. Elementary schools continue to lead the way with strong attendance, with an increase of 2% from 82 to 84%. Our middle schools also posted improvements, increase of 2%. And our high schools, while that continues to be the area of focus, we are pleased to share that our high schools also saw progress, an increase of 6% Last year, we prioritized targeted support for several of our schools, more specifically our high schools, and the results showed some improvement. And this shows that when we are intentional in our work, and last year we really focused on some of the foundational components to get our structure right, we were able to see those gains across all grade bands. Now, this is an opportunity, if we were, I guess, in Academic Excellence Committee, where I might pause to invite questions. But for the sake of time, I'd like for us to continue to move forward as we like to share with you a few things in terms of our plan for this upcoming year. Before we do that, I do want to kind of bring to life this in real time and a real example to illustrate both our progress and our work that we have ahead. I want you to think about Maria, who is a middle school student, right? She had some early struggles with attendance, missed several days in the fall, but because of her schools had a strong attendance team, which was an area that we prioritized last year, making sure that they had the right resources, that they were doing the right things, clear communication with families. She received support early. Her teachers reinforced and connections. They connected with her family to those counseling and wellness services through our wellness center. And by spring, Maria was consistently in school and finishing the year stronger than she began. She is an example of how our universal supports for all of our schools and all of our students make a difference. Now, in just a moment, Dr. Taylor is going to walk us through those targeted supports, those Tier 2 supports, and this benefited James, who is a high school student, who started the year with good attendance, but midway through the year, he had some challenges, some personal and family challenges, and he began to miss school quite regularly. And despite some of those supports that we provided to our attendance team in terms of resources, some basic attendance taking practices to ensure consistency across all of our schools and across all of our classrooms, he needed some more help, right? And this will highlight the importance of our Tier 2 early interventions, catching those students with emerging attendance issues who are on the verge of having some chronic absenteeism issues. And so both of these stories illustrate how important our work is, and we're going to outline what those universal supports are that we implemented last year, that we'll continue to do this year with greater focus and intensity, but also we're going to zoom in on those Tier 2 supports, one in particular that we're going to implement as a pilot for this upcoming year. Last year, you may recall, as I shared with you earlier, we worked to fix some structural issues in policy and district practices. Your feedback was really helpful to the district attendance team in refining and revising that attendance policy. You know that our work really created some flexible options, so we updated that attendance. We continue to prioritize the use of our wellness center to complement school counseling services that were being provided. And at the core of what we do, cannot lose sight of this, is those connections that we expect our teachers and our staff to cultivate in all of our schools. So this year, we're going to continue that. As you know, although the policy is new, the work now is in implementation. And so we'll be providing guidance to our schools, our attendance teams with greater resources. We'll be providing professional development and support to schools so that they can implement the attendance recovery and the asynchronous remote opportunity that is provided through our new policy and regulation. One of the things that we want to do is make sure that we're celebrating and recognizing those students like James who demonstrate improvement in his attendance as opposed to just a student who is in school every single day. So I think it's important for us to recognize that. So those are some of the key strategies that we'll continue to support and implement this year, and want to, at this particular time, transition to Dr. Taylor to walk us through some of our Tier 2 targeted supports for schools and students at this time.
Good afternoon. So before we actually get to the details related to the pilot, one of the things that we want to bring back to everyone's attention is that as we launch this pilot, we are using the PDSA model: plan, do, study, and act. And so we're in the planning stage right now. And what that means for our work is that we're defining the focus of the pilot, clarifying and establishing outcomes, as well as detailing what components of the pilot we'll use and how we'll actually do that. As it relates to expected outcomes, you'll see before you, we have 3 expected outcomes. First, to reduce chronic absenteeism, improve attendance rates, and then also increase family engagement, as well as increase follow-up support or conversion. We'll talk a little bit about the details of the app, but when I say follow-up and conversion, what we're really talking about is when we reach out to a family, if our follow-up made a difference and it converted into the student actually leveraging a resource and coming into school. Here are the specific pilot criteria. So for elementary school, chronic absenteeism, you'll see less than 15%. For middle school, between 20 to 30%, and for high school, you'll also see less than 30%. As it relates to the participation requirements, one of the things that we think is really important for the pilot to be successful is that the principal is in support of it, and they are an active member currently of their district and campus attendance team, and they've committed to fully implement the pilot, as well as that particular school already has in place consistent attendance intervention, specifically as it relates to Tier 1. And you heard Mr. Butler share the story of Maria and James. So we really are looking for campuses that already have strong pieces around their Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions. And then an additional consideration is, where possible, we would like to leverage the work that the social workers are doing, so schools that are already working very closely with their social workers. The schools that we're considering for the pilot, we're going to work with a group of elementary schools, middle schools, as well as 2 high schools. The elementary schools are Hodge, Brock, Haven, and Gadsden. The middle schools, Durin, Mercer, and Hubert. And then the high schools would be Beach High School as well as Groves. All right, so now I'll talk more about the details related to the pilot. Before I get in the details, however, I would like to ground or frame the conversation in strategy, innovation, and performance. Our strategy is rooted in using real-time data to get ahead of chronic absenteeism. Instead of waiting until a student is already chronically absent, what we want to do is anticipate trends and intervene early. Also, thinking about innovation, we're introducing an AI-powered tool that personalizes family outreach. And on the back end, what that really means for us is we'll get aggregated data that will help us adjust our strategy not only for the campus, but also across the district. The pilot will use actionable data to monitor attendance performance, as well as we'll be evaluating the impact of this Tier 2 intervention in an effort to strengthen our overall attendance outcomes. With that in mind, I would like to highlight a couple of specific benefits of the pilot. Families would get personalized outreach that's easy to understand and offers concrete steps that they can take if their student has a challenge with coming to school. We will also get better data so that we can spot attendance patterns early and adjust support in real time. As we go throughout this presentation, you'll hear real-time, early intervention. I cannot underscore those enough. What makes this really unique is that we will be looking at and receiving data about attendance in a way that's real-time, and we'll be having a 2-way communication with families. So you'll hear that throughout the presentation. It's also important to note that this tool or resource has also been proven successful in other districts. Districts that have used this approach have seen chronic absenteeism drop by nearly 7 percentage points in a single year, and there are also some cases in which it has dropped more than 6 percentage points after implementing the personalized nudges as well as targeted follow-up, and I'll get an opportunity to walk you through what a nudge is and how it actually works. So here is what the outreach or the nudge would actually look like for the family. And the first nudge that I'll walk you through is what we call a mail nudge. And what that simply means is that families would receive a customized letter for their student showing that students' attendance compared to peers. What's also important to note is it's visual and concise, so it's easy for families to read as well as digest. And it's framed from an asset or a partnership orientation, which makes a clear connection with the families. And it also allows the family, again, to know that the school does have resources and the school district has resources to support their student. So that is the mail nudge. The other piece that I'll point out about the mail nudge is that it's all automated. So the system generates letters automatically. So there are no manual prints. There are no finding the envelope, who has the stamps. There are no mail runs. It's all generated automatically. It flags also outdated contact information and identifies gaps in attendance data so that we can address very quickly if we have a bad phone number or if we have an address that may need to be updated. It flags that for us. And basically what that really means is that staff can now spend their time, I'm going to advance the slide, I'm sorry. What that now means is that staff can spend their time talking to families and problem solving instead of handling paperwork or managing these letters being mailed out. They actually have the time. Mr. Butler talked about this whole notion of connect, a time not only to connect with students, but also connect with families to find out what barriers, what support, what can we do to help make sure that your young person is at school. Alongside the mail nudges are text messages, or SMS, I believe is the official word, nudges. I just know it as a text message, but they actually get another way in which they're nudged, or we provide contact to the families. And what you'll see before you is a little bit of what a text nudge looks like. Text nudges are interactive or two-way communications that are available in multiple languages, and they also arrive in real time. So when a family gets a nudge, they can respond to the nudge, and then they'll get a response back. Families can also, through the nudge via text message, go directly to resources, whether it's help with transportation, counseling, whatever support it is that they might need. They would also have access to that support through the text message. It's simple, fast, and most importantly, it's accessible. And we're not just sending the message. The other thing that I really want to point out is this whole thing around tracking and learning from. So not only are we sending the message, but we'll be looking at that data to see what are the challenges that families are having, what are the things that are most being provided, what resources are we actually connecting families with. So we'll use the data to learn from. More about use of the data. What we'll now be able to know and understand is exactly how many families are receiving the nudges and whether or not they respond. So we'll know if we made contact with a family, did they actually respond? And not only did they respond, but did they actually leverage or use the resources that were provided? And every request will be tracked. We'll also be positioned to better understand patterns. Again, I mentioned it before, so that we can begin to see what is it that families need so that we can address root causes associated with chronic absenteeism. And then every interaction is automatically logged, and it gives us a real-time picture of if the family is actually interacting. And so, as I've noted before, as a pilot, we're trying it, and so we really want to learn from, is this something that will be helpful to families? Are they responding? Are they using the resources? And so again, all of that will be tracked and in real time. So there's no one that has to go in and update the spreadsheet. It's not something you have to put on your to-do list. It's already automatically done, and we'll have the data, and we'll be partnering not just with the schools,
team, but also with the attendance team, working with Kim McGuire's team, the social work team, Dr. Quintina Miller-Fields, to actually look at the data and being sure that we're providing the appropriate resources to support students around attendance. With that, I will pause, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for this presentation. She's like, oh, no.
No, I'm like, yay.
So I'm really happy for this pilot. I really like the nudges and the tools. I think it's innovative. It's a use of data that is not a heavy lift because we have the technology resources to do it, but it gives that one-on-one touch to our families. I have two questions. So looking at the data from the pilot program is going to allow us to react to what we see. If we see that, they're not responding to one type of nudge more than the other, then we can pivot based on us reacting to that. I want to return to the idea of, and I know I said principal components analysis, and Dr. May shot me down, and she was right. Looking at the effects on absenteeism, we talked about this last year, is can we do some sort of covariate analysis to look at what are the different things? So I do renew my request for a regression analysis of the things, of the data that we already collect, because then we don't have to react to the data we get from the pilot. We already have these data. And I was trying to dig back at what some of those things were in previous presentations, and I think in 2002, one of the things that we noted was that food security, parent engagement, measures of support impact absenteeism, and those are individual based. That's that child. What's happening with that child may impact whether or not that child is at school that day. But then there's also school-based factors that impact whether or not they're present, like mobility. Do you have a transient population that home is a different zip code every couple of months? What's the other one? Discipline, another school-based issue. Do you not want to go because the roof is on fire in that school, and so you're less likely, So there are different types of factors, but I really would like to see a regression analysis that, if it can be on all of our district data, since we have it, fine, but certainly on the pilot data, these schools were chosen and even revised because there were strategic reasons to understand what was happening with students not being in place in these schools. It would be great to know that the levers that are being flipped are the right levers based on the data in the pilot, but also our historic data. Because we were looking at, it was in 2002 when we were talking about absenteeism, and at that time, economic challenges were showing up for young people who were absent in the form of lack of early learning, food insecurity, shelter insecurity, crime. So I'm just wondering, what are the other things that we can pull out, do that analysis, get some p-values, and know that the best, the thing that's going to drive the trend more in attendance would be if we invest, and that comes back to us as a board. If we put more money in this thing, then that's going to make a bigger difference. So
Understood. I'll just say that I'm not sure, and I guess Laura May would be the best person to ask if we collect that level of data, because that would have to be reported by the parent, a lot of those issues. But I will say, Dr. Miller-Fields, when we go out and do truancy sweeps, her social workers, when we go into the homes and have conversations with families, they are collecting the exact level of data, but I don't think it's shared in any of our district platforms. But Dr. Miller-Fields has that data.
But we do have some of it that we collect through our Chevron report. So the mobility data across all the
Mobility,
schools, we
yes.
have that. Whether or not a family qualifies for SNAP benefits, we do have that. Whether or not the child has, and it doesn't have to be tracked to a child for me, because we have the power of large numbers to know that whatever is important is probably going to show up in our larger set of data.
I see what you're saying. It's not necessarily the specific reason a child has missed. That's what Dr. Miller feels. But you're looking at cross-referencing it with other data sources that may be a reason.
Right, because when we come back this next year
Right.
to decide what is important to fund, to combat absenteeism, we
Yes.
can't do all of it.
Yep.
But we might can choose the top three, and the top three are going to be driven by our examination of the data.
I do know that what Dr. Miller-Fields collects, though, is straight from the parent's mouth. And I'm not saying the other data doesn't have value, there may be correlation,
Yeah.
but hers is direct calls. My child did not come to school because we did not have food that week.
Yeah, and I value both of them.
Right.
You and your team take the information from the parent and you act operationally.
We attempt to, yes.
We can't do anything with that as board members, except when they call us and say, I need, and then we direct them to the resource that they need. So I think that is information that's used in a different way. We also need the systemic information. But I think that, I do think that is valuable, but just used differently.
Yes, and so what I'll take away from this conversation is that as we're planning, because I did mention we're in the planning stages, it's an opportunity for us to think now about how we'll triangulate the data and look at multiple data sources to look at what the actual causes are.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I almost forgot my second question. The second question is, how are parent liaisons involved? Is that okay? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, like, how are parent liaisons involved? Because you're doing this one-to-one communication, you're texting, you have this person in-house that's supposed to be helping with parents. So is there a role for parent liaisons in your,
Parent facilitators.
Yeah, thank you. Is there a role for parent facilitators in your pilot? Are they a part of your system to move this along, or has this been developed independent of?
They could be. I would say our social workers and counselors are probably more
Right.
involved.
Okay.
But I'll take that to the team. We have a charter team, and we can discuss how and if they fit in or they plug into this.
Mr. Smith.
I think that my question was captured throughout Dr. Hoskins' questions. My lean-in was going to be with the schools that we have, the number of schools that we have, how many people, individuals do we have actually working on this on the regular and consistent basis? But
Everybody's working on it.
Yes.
everybody's working on it. So, okay.
Yeah, we all have roles in working on it, so we have a committee at the school level, but district level, we're also looking at data, we're also deploying resources and support where we see things not moving in the right direction, so it would be, of course, at the school site and at the classroom level is where we want most of this to be solved, because we know when school meets the needs of students, regardless of what those needs are, and school is a safe and joyful place to come. So at the classroom level specifically, but when we see some of these other issues emerging, we have committees, and then at the district level, we are actively looking at this data.
Had a district attendance
Weekly.
committee meeting today.
Yes, weekly, if not daily in some cases.
And I think that a great kudos to our team is necessary, and to all the employees, because when we think about educating children, I think that the number one priority is making sure that the campus facility experience is proper. But now we are having to reach outside of the four walls on the regular and consistent basis to make sure they get to the campus to receive that experience. So I thank you for your efforts sincerely.
That's right.
Dr. Howard Hall? I'm sorry, Ms. Hall.
I guess you'll give me a little nudge.
We're starting already. I love that.
That was good, that was good.
To Dr. Hoskins' Brown point, all of these schools are Title I schools, and they do, in most cases, have a parent facilitator. So this is a wonderful opportunity to engage those parent facilitators. They also have program managers as well. And but I have a specific question to Mr. Butler. Given your extensive experience here in the school in the school district as an educator, as an administrator, what particular strategies worked? How did they yield that positive change that we needed? And if there were any, are we still engage in those different strategies, implementing those strategies?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question, and I think a lot of the work that's happening this year and what we laid as a foundation in terms of fixing structurally last year was important. So it really requires a team effort. That district attendance team, which is made up of several staff persons to include in many cases, our family engagement facilitators at several of our schools. But I cannot underscore the importance of how school culture and how our teachers, our staff, our administrators, even our students, how they create communities where they are connecting and cultivating those positive relationships. And so our schools, in many ways, and you'll hear from Dr. Barnes either today or in some upcoming sessions around how that's really a priority, elevating that. And I think you mentioned around our schools being places where students want to be. So those are the strategies that we're putting in place. There's not a silver bullet, but those are foundational pieces that I think are important.
And the only thing I'll add to that, certainly I don't have the extensive background in this system with attendance, but one of the things we were really deliberate and intentional about, and Dr. Barnes as well as Mr. Butler will share this with you, is this is something that we actually had on the table last year, but before we actually introduced this, we did similar to what you're alluding to, is we really wanted to unpack and understand what we already had in place to see what was working, and then sometimes we recognize that things don't work, not because it can't work, but it was around implementation. So I do want to publicly acknowledge the team, Dr. Barnes and Mr. Butler, because they pushed hard. I remember sitting in the room like, we should just do it. And they were like, no, ma'am, we have to get this right. And that's what Mr. Butler described, what the team really worked to clean up and tighten up so that we could use this as an enhancement, not necessarily replacing the things that we know that already work.
Mrs. Hall?
Okay, Ms. Taylor, every once in a while I end up 8:30, 9 o'clock somewhere I shouldn't be, which is a fast food line.
I was waiting on the other part of that. Okay. I was like, it's going the wrong way. That's okay.
And I see our kids at work. So I'm wondering how tight we keep the agreement with our employers about the times that our children are to be able to work and when they should be at home. And I don't want to, you don't want to say anything. I want to, but, if that child's working, they're working because they need to work, probably.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, but I believe a lot of it is these kids, even kids who aren't working, they're at home activities. Like our grandson, midnight, he's still up. Why? So, and you see the sleep patterns they stay up and then they want to sleep through the day. So, again, I guess Dr. Miller-Fields can work with the parents in terms of that.
She can, and our entire team can, but I think what I'll add to connect it to the work of the pilot, that's what I really think that's effective about it, is it is two-way communication. So a family could say, the water in my apartment complex wasn't working. My child had to stay home to sit. I'm the oldest. I have 2 younger siblings, and so I've had some babysitting gigs. I don't know that I missed school because of it, but there are lots of different things, and we want to hear that from families. And of course, we'll use the data that we already have, and you're collecting it anecdotally. But I think that's what's really unique about the pilot is it positions us to learn if that is an issue. Do we need to work with Dr. Lewis and her team or whoever it is that's facilitating work in our district? So yes, I think you bring up a valid point, but I also think that this pilot could help us learn more about that because the family can say any reason that their child wasn't able to come to school.
I don't know if Mr. Butler and Dr. Barnes are aware, but we have at least one high school where if you're late for school, you have to go to ISS. And that's very disconcerting for me because I don't see how missing a whole day of classes some kind of way helps me because I wasn't there for the beginning of that first period. So I just think that's something, you know, punitive action right now probably is not the
Agreed.
answer. So that's just another thing for your committee to look at. What, you know, are you late because you're a administrative placed student, so you're driving from outside of your home zone to a school? Are you late because of that? But to go to ISS, I think, kind of defeats the spirit, if not the, you know, the letter of what we're
And I
doing.
will say, it's very difficult to consequence tardies. Because what is the consequence? I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you that we shouldn't be isolating kids even more by putting them in ISS or even putting them out of school for OSS. But when you think about a consequence for tardies, it can be, I mean, as a principal, I've had to give a parent a consequence before for late. She didn't want her daughter to have silent lunch, so she got to come and supervise the middle school party dance on Friday. That was her consequence, but, it did. But she didn't want her child because she said it was not my child's fault. I drive the car, so she can't get there until I get there. But you have to be really out of the box thinker. You would think that some of this, though, would have to show up in a student's academic performance. So if you're chronically tardy, then that means you're missing teaching and learning. And, but I also am not a proponent of grading kids based on attendance, because attendance is a behavior. It's not an academic task. So we could definitely use a little bit more thought partnership on that, because I think schools right now are trying to figure out what is the consequence. And we have chosen to take an asset-based approach to make schools such that kids want to be there on time. And they don't want to be late. But obviously there are circumstances, and some beyond a child's control, that gets them to school late. So that's a harder nut to crack, for sure.
Ms. Grabowski.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and I really like and appreciate the work that the team has done to be very proactive and try and nip the problem in the bud like as quickly as possible. A few questions on the pilot schools. I noticed that there are a few more that have been added since we got our original board packet, so I'll take that as a good sign. Are there additional schools that we think should be pilot schools, but because they did not have the supports in place that you mentioned as kind of the prerequisites, that they are not pilot schools? And the second part of that question is, if the answer is yes, are we working to get those prerequisites in place to be able to bring them up to speed?
Thank you for that question. I'll actually pun to Dr. Barnes, and he can talk more about the criteria in school selection.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So to answer that question, yes, we will look at additional schools. What we wanted to make sure is that the pilot didn't get so large that it became the main thing, and then, you know, we would have made a significant investment and not have yielded the results that we were going out there. But in terms of the prerequisite, yeah, there are several schools that still have the prerequisites in place that have some still attendance and truancy challenges. But while we are continuing to strengthen our truancy and attendance team processes, in that control group, we want to see if what we are currently doing as a district, and that we have been doing over the course of years, our monitoring and supervision of that and making sure it's been done at a high level, does that continue to, you know, yield positive results? As well as if we look at the pilot, where are we seeing the bigger bang for the input that we're putting out there versus just throwing a lot of schools into another initiative? So we're doing two things simultaneously. We're strengthening our processes that we currently have as a tier one core strategy across all our schools, and then looking at how we do this as a tier 2 strategy for schools that we want to try to enhance what we are strengthening as a foundation as our approach to decreasing chronic absenteeism and getting more kids to school every day on time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
This has great links to our return on investment conversations.
Right.
Yes.
As well. So
Right.
we don't want to just add on and spend money.
Right.
Before we know something works. And we also have to understand our own, this team over here, our own rollout of things, so that when we roll things out, they're done well. And it's not necessarily, in some cases, that the program was bad, but the rollout was bad.
Right.
and I appreciate that very much. I mean, it's not really a pilot if you do it everywhere.
Correct.
And having a smaller group obviously gives you the ability to more closely evaluate its effectiveness, so certainly appreciate that. A couple just technical questions. The resources that you mentioned, like what you're struggling with, if a parent responds transportation, what resource is that attached to on the backside?
So, for example, it could connect them potentially to the CAT partnership. It could connect them to the transportation department. So there are a variety of resources that it could plug them into based on what their specific need is.
Okay.
And the other thing I'll add is, though it'll connect them to a resource, it's also creating this space where the schools in particular can reach out to those families and have a conversation. That's why the social worker piece in the requirement was critical, because Dr. Watts spoke about this thing of hearing from the family. Though we think this AI piece is going to help, we also don't want to take away the value of being able to have a conversation with a family, because sometimes transportation isn't that you need CAT. It could be something that's more complex, if you will. So we want to be able to do both. So that's another thing to think about, is it's really running simultaneously. Not only is it connecting them with a resource, but it's also flagging for the school that I need to talk to Ms. Taylor and see exactly what does she need help with around transportation. So it's both and.
Okay, and I hope that we've got United Way 211 plugged in as part of that
Yes, we do.
resource list. I'm sure we do.
We do.
And then one of my questions is going to be, okay, can they get to a person? Because nothing is more frustrating than trying to go to battle with an AI bot. Is the AI the same AI that we are using on our website?
It's not the same, but many of the resources will be similar or the same, but we'll also have some that are more directed to outreach around what we know about families' needs when it comes to attendance.
Well,
but
as
it's not the same bot, no.
As we move forward, are we looking to make those the same? Because it seems like that would be more valuable in understanding the data that we're collecting and not having two separate things that we have to maintain and update and monitor.
At the moment, we are not, but I think that goes back to the conversation that we're having before. That's why it's a pilot,
Okay.
is we really need to learn and understand what resources they need. You asked about the United Way.
Yeah.
To date, we haven't put in a lot of community resources, but we are going to be adding in community resources. So though they're both bots, they really serve two different purposes if you really go to the purest sense, because if you look at the Let's Talk, that is more about information and awareness in general for families, but this is directly derived from what your needs are around attendance, and it has some customized things that are specific to attendance. But I do understand and will note your point around looking at how we consolidate, and then that goes back to our ROI discussion. What are the things that we have that are duplicative? So, yes.
Well, yeah, and I get that, but if I'm a parent, do I have to go to my phone and text, or do I have to go to the website? Like, making it more complicated to understand where I have to go, I think is going to be a barrier if
Yes, ma'am.
if this is the direction we're going in. So I just want us to be mindful of that, and
Yes.
just, we don't need to
Understood.
build two things. And then my last question, so I've gotten a lot of questions about the new attendance policy. Is this just being discussed? Is this implemented? I'm not sure that it's well understood, that the new attendance policy is well understood, even by some of our school-based teachers and partners. So do you have a strategy that where you're using? I know it's in, like, at the beginning of the year, you get your school handbook. Here are the things that have changed. Pay attention. But there's so much at the beginning of the year. I think another dedicated push would be really helpful.
Yeah, no, you make a very good point, and that's one of the things that we considered with all of the things that happened at the beginning of the year. What was the best way to communicate and what that cadence would be, so that schools can learn the information at a rate that they could handle. And so we are this month actually rolling out some additional support for district attendance teams and principals to better understand how to operationalize some of those components within the new attendance policy. So that's happening this month. There'll be a series of support sessions specifically for them. Our district attendance team is also working very closely with the communications office in rolling out what those communication touch points will be with our families, either through email, through updates on our district website, as well as call-outs. So we didn't want to overwhelm parents with all of the information, but that plan is being set in motion this month now that we're out of that first month of school. But yes, to your point, it's a lot of information. We recognize that this is implementation year, and we want to make sure, but we also acknowledge that there are going to be some bumps along the way. And so we are working to provide that clarification. District attendance team met today to make sure that we are all aligned on what those resources are, and to make sure that they are available at minimum to our schools. Because we as a district office can communicate, but we know most times that that information is well received, or much better received from our schools. So we want to make sure that they have the information as well.
And if I
I
could,
heard Dr. Watts, I'm sorry.
I was just going to add to Mr. Butler's comments there that we just today were meeting with our communications and our outreach staff. And September is Attendance Awareness Month traditionally in the state of Georgia. So that is a thematic that we seek to leverage additional push on the new attendance policy. We had a very robust breakdown of that in the Back to School Hub. But your words are spot on. There was a lot of competition for the attention of the parent at back to school. Now we're into our rhythm. We've had a month to get there. We've got a perfect opportunity with September being Attendance Awareness Month. And to Mr. Butler's comments, we're working closely with the group there to reinforce key points of that policy change. We don't want anyone to be surprised by an NC on their report when they get close to the end of the grading period. So that's a priority for us as well, and we appreciate you recognizing that.
Yeah. And I heard Dr. Watts mention that working through the schools and the classroom level, which I totally support and celebrate, but as you know, that gets really hard at the high school level when all you have is advisement that only meets periodically. It's that classroom touch, just by nature of the high school, I think gets lost.
So I often talk about change management, and I know you all's jobs are to write policy, and the policy is appreciated, but nothing is ever accomplished by a policy alone. It takes months, weeks, various communications to actually get change management all the way out and internalized by people. So this year is a big year around attendance. We'll have grading, we have personal device usage, like all of these things are bubbling up, and I try to be real intentional about how fast or slow I go on things, because it's not humanly possible for people at our level and at the school level to be able to understand and leverage all of these things at the same time. It's not humanly possible to do it well.
Okay. All right. Ms. Campbell, then Dr. Hoskins-Brown. Sorry.
So I wanted to say thank you to Mr. Butler and to Ms. Taylor and Dr. Barnes, because personally, after the audit of attendance, I was having palpitations. I was very concerned about fidelity of our attendance records, and we would talk a lot about wanting to offer the wraparounds and supports for students, but it seemed like not only could we not, because there were so many attendance issues, but we didn't even know exactly how it was happening. And it looks like you guys have addressed this from all of those angles. How do we get kids in the classroom with the policy? Now they have a consequence, which I think you have to have, as Mr. Jepson said, standards and consequences, right? So people try to fall within the boundaries of what's acceptable. But I think you've also addressed the piece that we should be doing, which is meeting students where they are, where when there is a consequence, we can say, I believe in that consequence, and I believe that is efficacious to the student, to the family, to the system, and we don't have to feel like we're just, punishing every child regardless of where they're coming from or what their situation is. I think this is great. It's specifically making it about where that student is. With that said, I hopefully we won't have to think outside of the box too much if no credit is an issue. That should kind of be the consequence. But I just wanted to say thank you, and I think that you did an amazing job of addressing these concerns. And I feel like we have been heard and the community has been heard, so thank you very much.
Thank you, and you can call names that are in the room, but I'll say this as a matter of record. There are many people that are outside of the room that were part of making this happen, thinking about what's the best approach to take, lots of thought partnerships. So thank you to all of the team, some which are here with us today, but those who aren't here, it was definitely a team effort. And we started last year, and now we're going to begin to internalize and operationalize those things to see better outcomes.
Dr. Hoskins?
Thank you. My comment is brief. I just want to circle back around to the parent facilitator. This idea of these nudges is really helpful, but as we were talking, I was thinking about the nudges that I get from doctor's appointments saying, hey, your appointment's coming up. Hey, we look forward to seeing you. And they couch that like it's for you, but it's not for you. It's for them because they want their copay and they want to make sure that you're a no-show. You're not a no-show. So my thought is that maybe the role of the facilitator is to put the spin and say, hey, this is coming, y'all. This is going to be great. It's going to be so helpful for you. You're not going to have attendance surprises. Like, this is going to be terrific, and it's going to be helpful, rather than it just coming like, a bill or some other nuisance SMS that they receive.
No, I appreciate that. That makes me think about the rollout piece that Dr. Watts mentioned before, is not just all of a sudden you start getting nudges, but how we actually roll it out and what we learn from what works in the rollout, where we see gaps. And then also, as we roll it out, how do we adjust? Because I will use myself as an example. I opt out. After my second one, I'm out. So we need to learn to see, is it something that parents are actually going to use? And that goes back to the points that were made previously about why it is a pilot. Even though we did go back and add more schools, that's why we started with a smaller group we even thought about, but we didn't land there, is just doing one level, because there is a lot that we have to learn and study about it, but we do think it's the right thing to try to see how it can help us make ground.
Dr. Albert Hall.
Okay, yes, just one more, this will be very brief. There's a reason why those schools were selected. We know that in some cases, there are a significant number of students who are reporting to school tardy, as many as 200 to 300 daily. That's excessive. So there needs to be some type of consequence for those students. And I know that it's a part of the culture. As I say, if it happens once, it becomes the climate, but more than once, it becomes a part of the culture. So there are some issues concerning tardiness, and what type of consequences, I'm not sure, but there definitely needs to be some type of structured consequence if you have that number of students who are just like a days ago about reporting to school, and especially I guess if they're walkers, and I'm speaking of high school level right now.
Thank you for that. All right, if nothing else, thank you all. We appreciate your feedback, and it's noted.
Thank you very much. All right. Change orders. Okay. The most riveting part of the meeting, our quarterly change orders.
Thank you. You previously have received the quarterly change order report for the second quarter. For review, we are reporting 24 total change orders, 6 of which have already gone to the board in accordance with board policy. And these are all change orders that are finalized and approved for April, May, and June of 2025. So without going through them in detail, I'm certainly here to take questions.
Ms. Grabowski.
So I had a question. It was on page 3 at the bottom for me to add strobes and smokes per fire marshal, and that's a code requirement. So curious how that got missed, and is that change order now on us? Because if that's a code requirement, it seems like it should have been included in the drawings.
We find, particularly with the fire marshal, that you can get the plans approved by the state, but when the fire marshal himself goes through for his inspections, I want a strobe here, I want this here, I want that detector there, and they typically have a lot of additional things besides what would be approved in the plans for them to give their final inspections and approvals.
Okay. Is there anything that we need to do within our own internal design, or anything that we can do within our own internal design guidelines to increase, like if we see change orders like that happen project after project, where we can proactively address it to try and minimize change orders?
I believe so, and I think that's a good point. I think we certainly can look and say, you know, fire marshals have given us a lot of problems lately. Let's do everything we can to get these drawings to the point where we have all of these items included in them so that we don't land up with the mistakes and the additional costs at the end of the job.
And I know sometimes there are staffing changes and that can lead to change orders too, but appreciate that. Thank you.
Dr. Ringman.
I guess I'll piggyback on the, can we add other things to our already long laundry list of things we need to make sure we do to make sure things all go swimmingly? And this would be on page 210, the asbestos abatement extra cost. I know we've discussed it before, just wanted to make sure that it's part of our procedures policy that we punch a hole in a wall before we get people to give us a quote on how much things are gonna, I mean, I don't know. I mean, because a bunch of our buildings that we're gonna be renovating and demolishing in E5 were probably built in around the same time, probably by a lot of the same subcontractors. And yeah, it's easier to swallow when it's at the beginning and might not cost as much when they bid it because it's not a big change. So, thank you.
Mrs. Hall.
This question is kind of for Dr. Watts. I have gotten 2 phone calls from employees who are still at 208, one saying that she's becoming sick because of the mold. Is there a timeline to get the rest? Who is still there? Human Resources and Campus
Human
Police?
Resources, our Office of Instructional Excellence and our Office of School Leadership is still there. Those are the main departments. There may be a few security individuals that are supporting that, but those are the main 3 departments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, the timeline has been pushed back as we've continued to try to negotiate space with campus police, but also try to think long-term so that we're not moving people and then 3 to 5 years from now, we got to move them again. So we've got to do some updates to the facility, changes to the facility to accommodate those departments. Those are underway. Currently, as we speak, I think we finalized all the plans for those about 2 weeks ago. But here's what I'll say. If there is an individual at 208 Wool Street who is experiencing any health-related issues or concerns, if they will go to their immediate manager and let that person know, we will find space for that person to go.
Okay.
So I don't want anybody to be waiting on a timeline from us if they are experiencing any health issues, because we have space and we will find them a work environment that is conducive.
Okay. That's good to know. So we'll know to say that. I don't know if anyone else has gotten any calls. I don't know why they pick on me, but.
But they can also reach out to me directly if they feel that's better.
No, thank you. That's it. Thank you very much. I will now entertain a motion to go into executive session. Thank you. Moved and seconded, all in favor? See.